Hello, and welcome to the Steve and Mark Discuss podcast, where Steve will raise an issue, I will listen, and then we'll just dissect it. And can't promise to come up with any answers, but it will certainly be an interesting journey. Over to Steve.
Hi, people. So let's have a look at the EU yet again, as we look at the world geopolitics. They've opened a can of worms in the EU. Everybody's pointing fingers at everybody else. Germany's heading for another recession. The farmers are blocking the roads. The Deutsche Bahn railway workers have gone on strike. In Holland, the farmers are protesting because of the way that the EU is treating them with I think it's about the fertilizer. They're not allowed to use a certain fertilizer, which is going to reduce all the yields, which is going to make everything super expensive in the EU. It's going to bankrupt quite a lot of people. So, they need to sort that out. In the meantime, just outside of the EU, but on the fringe of the EU, is the UK, where the government is not being 100% truthful about the economy and about the debt in the UK. The government is going to be hit by another billion pounds bill because there's been a big scandal about the post office finding sub postmasters guilty of fraud when really it was a problem with the computer program. Italy, for their part, they're wanting sooner rather than later an EU joint military army, possibly because they need to protect their border from the influx of illegal immigrants arriving there. Finland is extending their border ban with Russia. In Poland, people are being arrested that have already been pardoned. One political prisoner yesterday entered on hunger strike. Let's see how many meals he'll miss before they sort that one out. So, basically France, forgot about France. The economy in France is shot. And also the French farmers are talking about taking up some sort of industrial action, if you can call it that, if that's what it's. Along with, of course, the unrest of the Middle Eastern immigrants who've settled in that country, and all the other European countries, And so basically, there's a lot of, and this year is the elections. In the other podcast, I said this year, 64 countries and the EU is going to hold their elections, and this year is the election of the EU. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen on that one. If it's going to be a change at the top, is it going to be business as usual? So there's an awful lot to, excuse me, there's an awful lot to dissect here. And I was watching our friend Survival Lily. She's Austrian. She's not German. She's Austrian. And she was complaining about the new taxes that are all being brought in when you buy a new car, which makes, with all due respect to her, she's to me the fact that she's Austrian is even more humorous to me than it's just German. But I mean, the title of a channel is a little bit of an oxymoron when it's Survival Lily. And it's complaining about the difficulties of buying a new car. But that's by the by.
Was
She's one of my sources of information, so I
yeah,
can't criticize too much
yeah, well, she's on the
because
ground. Yeah, yeah,
she's there. She's
yeah,
there.
yeah,
I like. She's all right.
yeah. No, no. I mean, she. Oh, I can't fault her English and everything. She's second language. Yeah. I mean, survival Lily. Just starting with her. Yes, like I said, she's a survivalist. She's a prep. What's termed as a prepper, I believe. Yeah. When the heat goes down, I'm tempering my language here. When the heat goes down, yeah, they run to the hills. I don't know.
She's.
Yeah,
I can see you could if you watch the latest podcast of her,
yeah,
not wanting to dwell on her
yeah,
because this podcast isn't about her. It's about Europe and the EU.
yeah.
But you can see the stress on her face now,
I,
and she's complaining about new cars.
I mean, I go with the people I know in the UK. I know people across Europe. I'm in communication with. Um, yeah, I've never seen so much, like you say, uncertainty, stroke, anguish. I don't say anger. I'll say anguish. I mean, I did make the point. I wrote a letter to someone. Yeah, I used to know the UK. The small not a brief note. Yeah, they rely on this, and yeah, there are things that people moan about in Europe, which yeah, right, they have every right to moan about, which we consider quite normal living in Brazil. Still, the standards and way things are. Um, Brazil has led the way in a few things. Yeah, or hasn't actually achieved anything, and yeah, I mean, the realization is that we've got that. Right. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. We've probably had it in Europe so good, too good for so long, if you follow the logic what I'm saying here.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
we mentioned this. We mentioned this in another podcast that the
yeah,
youngsters today have never
yeah,
had life hard.
yeah.
It's always been a privilege.
I mean, even when I was growing up, I remember my parents had good times, they had bad times. I'd certainly, we go through the same experience here. Yeah, we joke about it here, how am I going to survive this month? We find a way. Um, it is a now what is happening across Europe, and I think you and I we've only known each other a couple of years. I think, yeah, but we were probably saying the same thing before we met each other about the way Europe is, the way it's structured, what is behind the way that Europe is starting. It started as the EU started as a trading bloc. Great, wonderful, in the 1970s. Yeah, allow trade with each other. Yeah, a
It's
bit
called
like
the common market back then.
yeah, that's it. And then it slowly transformed into this centralized federal um, um,
Organization.
organization. Yeah, I was going to use another term. I couldn't remember to get the pronunciation right in my head. But yeah, it is a. I'm not going to use terms here that are going to get banned. To me, yes, it's a centralized organization that wants more and more power, more and more influence over individual countries, coming down to even on our right, European citizens' rights as individuals. Now I know what that sounds like, and I think that's exactly what it is, one way or another.
You're not wrong.
And yeah, this is what worries me, and the people at the top, as you say, what's going to happen now. In the previous podcast, we spoke about having elections. We didn't really speak too much about European elections. I mean, yeah, I still vote in the UK. I'm not sure if I can actually vote for a European election or not. I'll find out. I can certainly vote for a domestic one. Yeah, domestic one. Yeah. Well,
We're not part of the EU.
Oh no, can't anymore. No, so sorry. Yeah, good correction there, Steve. Good catch. Yeah, I know why I thought that. Yeah, I've been hanging. We left. Well, let's put it this way.
You must be a Remainer.
Yeah. I still find it difficult to believe the concept that the UK has actually left the European Union. I see the thing is, no longer part of, but I'm a bit skeptical about that notion. But yeah, we'll leave that for another podcast. But basically, really, what's been happening, yes, there's more and more control, more and more centralized. All this interdependency upon each other as well for a single currency might sound great and wonderful. We all know that the figures, the countries were almost encouraged to lie or tell half truths about their actual involvement or their not involvement, but their currency economies. Yes. So it is a, how can I put it? To me, the whole thing is a con. It's not doing what it was supposed to be doing originally. It is a for me, it is for the purposes to serve the elites, to serve centralized power. I honestly believe, and I'm going to be direct here, I believe it's a WEF child almost. I don't know how much influence the WEF have or whether they're suggesting the WEF theoretically is a think tank, doesn't have any power. Shouldn't have.
The EU.
Yeah. We can see that it's maybe not fit for purpose. It's not doing what it's meant to do. It was meant to protect us against all this downward spiraling that's occurring, and it's not. People are disenchanted by the notion of the strikes. The farmers are upset. The peasants are revolting, as it were. As you said, as we said in the previous podcast last week, which I'll put a link to, there is an option to change. Now, the UK has proved this can happen in the European Union by voting for a party or representatives that are opposed to the European Union. I don't know what opposed means. The UK before Brexit happened tried to go for reform. This is where Cameron may have been a little bit unfair. We might be unfair on Cameron. He did try and push for reform, and nobody listened to him, which would have probably prevented everything we're seeing now happening. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an economist, not that I trust economists necessarily. I know in my own eyes what I can see. Recessions happen. It's the natural order of capital markets. They go up and down, even in communist countries. Yeah. Are we all going to be one happy family with all this? No. People aren't going to want to pay more taxes on things. People aren't going to want to pay more taxes to support other countries in Eastern Europe that are going to start failing. People are beginning to question about, well, wait until the bill for the Ukraine comes in, if they do join the EU, or even if they don't join the EU, there'll be all sorts of emergency funds or something for things. Unless, as we've said before, Russia might take that over and it'll come from the BRICS instead. Yeah,
I think what the problem with the EU is that they're trying to do a one size fits all approach, where they proved this with Greece a few years ago, when basically bringing in the euro, it basically destroyed the Greek economy.
Yeah,
and they had that problem in Greece, also in Italy, in Spain as well. If the truth be known, where if you wanted a cheap holiday years ago, you'd go to Italy or you'd go to Spain, because their economies allowed it. But these days, unfortunately, you can't. The people in Brussels are trying to make Spain abide by the same rules as in Germany. When Germany didn't want any more gas from Russia, they applied this for the whole of the EU. Whereas the reality in each country is very different. One from the other. Some countries like Italy still managed to get gas from Russia, but they had to do a lot of double dealing and but they still got it in the end. But like I said, the reality in Italy is very much different than the reality in Belgium, for
Mm.
example. If you go to the wealthiest
Yeah.
countries in the EU,
Mm.
sort of Belgium, Holland, Germany,
Yeah.
Austria, the quality of life is so much different than what it is in Italy, Spain.
Yeah.
And when you start to go moving east to
Yeah.
the Eastern Europe, also their reality is so much different than what it is in Central, where
Well,
the talking heads of the EU tend to spend all their lives, and
yeah.
they need to have a better vision of life.
Yeah.
In what we said in another podcast, you have to respect the culture of another country.
Exactly. Yeah.
They tend to they fail to see that.
Well, they live in their bubble, and I mean, we say it's about individual countries. For example, in the UK, we talk about the London bubble. Here we got the Brussels
Yeah.
bubble. Absolutely. I mean, I come from London, effectively. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I've lived in different parts of the country and probably, admittedly, have a little bit of a superiority complex over them. But yeah. It is a. I think that this was always predicted by certain people, even back in the 70s, where you're going with it, when you read the history. Funny enough, in the 80s, Margaret Thatcher actually saved the EU from from what I'm hearing now, from what is happening now, by bringing in some reforms. So it was actually the UK in the 1980s that actually saved the EU. Otherwise, we'd have probably been, we probably wouldn't be even talking about an EU today. My idea, I mean, the concept of a collective entity that allows trade and ease of movement and everything else is great. It's wonderful. Yeah. The reality is it's become this horrendous federal monster. Let's put it honestly. That's expensive to operate. Doesn't do anything. What really, as you sort of say, how does a Frenchman know how I want to think? How do I know what a Frenchman wants to think? Yeah. With all due respect, okay, we're going to the English French thing, but yeah, I'll bet I like French people. I like the people in Europe. My opposition to the European Union and why I support Brexit has always been because of the situation coming. It's not a dislike of Europeans. I celebrate the different cultures across Europe. Yeah.
Cool. It used to be fun to go on holiday in
Yeah.
Europe, to travel
Yeah.
around Europe,
Yeah.
when you had to change your currency up to go to the different countries,
Yeah.
and you had to and you tried to speak the different languages, but they trying to make it into one big blancmange. It's all the same,
Which
no
which
matter where
is
you go.
which is
And
well, that to me that is a totalitarian um, regime
yeah,
or way of thinking. I won't say regime, I'll say a way of thinking. Yeah, you're not allowed to be individualistic. You're not allowed to be what you want to be. I mean, even in countries we disagree on things, the best things, but I mean, yeah, I remember again, I always quote it as a Yes Minister sketch or a Yes Minister segment where they're talking about the EU or there's been a couple, yeah. And it was cynical, and it was looking at this like, I mean, even in the 70s and the 80s, you got the Butter Mountain. It proved it couldn't organise drink up in a brewery, even in the 70s and the 80s. We've now got to the point where it's really is. It's more than emphasising the fact it can't. Yeah. So much so is that okay, we're talking about electing our politicians to go there, where oh yeah, I've done my bit, I've done my duty. We elect these people. What influence do they really have? We all know that the policies are now decided by the top tier of elites,
that's all. Yeah.
and which is
Well,
scary. Yeah.
I'm just glad that I'm here in Brazil and not across there.
Oh, I mean, as we said,
Just for Van der Leyen, the surplus, the trade surplus
Yeah.
here in Brazil,
Yeah.
is reached. It's in record highs.
yeah.